Hi, my name is Pastor Aaron Moore, and I have with me Denny Dietrich, and we wanted to put together this video to train the small group leaders of our church. So you've probably been asked to be a small group leader, and we want to talk through with you what that means and what it looks like to be a small group leader. We're going to try to answer two main questions. Number one, how do you prepare for small groups? And then number two, how do you lead the small group? First of all, you need to know that the goal of our small groups is to deepen relationships and help others be doers of the word. And so the way that you prepare for that is by, first of all, praying for your group and for the discussion. It is a work of God.
It is.
That people grow to be more like Christ. It's not a work of us. It's not having just the right thing to say. It's not being able to perfectly articulate scripture to someone's problems. It is God working in them. And so you got to pray for your group and encourage your group to pray for each other. Second thing you need to do as you prepare is listen to the sermon. It's kind of hard to lead small group
Very.
if you haven't listened to the message. And then the third thing is take notes and encourage your group to take notes. That'll help the message stick with them better, and then it will also give you content that when you come in together, you've already got something to work with.
And then number four, in the afternoon, go over your notes. Take a look at what the questions are that were already in the bulletin. And frequently, you might find yourself adding questions to it while the sermon is going on. I do that frequently. And then tweak them a little bit maybe. You know, instead of just reading the questions that are there, ask them in a different way. It gets people thinking. And sometimes you get enough questions that you wrote down, you might not even get to the questions that were prepared already. And that's okay. That this isn't an exact science.
But now that the group started, once you get to the house or wherever you're meeting for your small group, how do you lead the small group? First thing is, remember that your job is to listen, not to give your opinion. You're a facilitator. You're trying to promote conversation,
Exactly.
Not dominate conversation. The second thing is that you need to know that you don't have to have all of the answers. Questions might come up. Don't be afraid of questions that are difficult. If no one in the group can answer it, just say, hey, I will check it out and I will get back with you next week.
Exactly. And then it also helps to ask open-ended questions. The goal is to get discussion going, so you're trying to not ask yes or no questions, because that will end conversation right away. So ways to do that is to say, what do you think about? Or how do you? Or when is? Or how is? Or why? Those are all good questions to ask to get people thinking. And then after you ask the question, stop and be quiet. What's helped me is to count to 15 seconds very slowly to give people a chance to think, because maybe they haven't heard the question that you just asked, so they need time in their mind to formulate an answer. And that 15 seconds gives them time to do that.
And that 15 seconds feels like a long time.
It does.
That's why counting is helpful. If you ask the question and someone answers it, and you're just like, where in the world did that come from? People are going to answer questions that are going to be completely off track. What you need to do is try asking the question in a different way. So maybe they just misunderstood the question, so that's why they're off track.
Exactly.
Or you can ask if anyone else has an answer. And so you don't have to point them out or call them out. You can just say, hey, does anyone else have something to add to that? Or can you answer it in a different way? And if nobody jumps at that, you can say, well, does everybody agree with his or her answer? Then usually people will jump in.
Yes.
Because they're like, no, I don't agree with that. And they're probably sitting there going, that seems a little bit off to me. If nobody still answers, you may kind of give hints for the answer that you're looking for, or maybe how the answer needs to be tweaked a little bit. Or you just straight up say, hey, that's not quite the answer I'm looking for. Does anyone else have an answer? One of the key things, though, is do not call someone wrong, dumb, or stupid. You will shut down the conversation if you're like, yeah, that was dumb.
And people will stop coming.
And they'll stop coming, yeah. And if part of the main part of our goal is to connect people, you want people to come. It's kind of important. So instead of that, whenever someone answers a question, try to encourage them and just say, hey, that's a great point. My personal favorite one to say is, I never thought of that. Because many times people have perspectives, they got life experience that we've never had, and so they bring that in. Or you can just say something as simple as, hey, thank you for sharing.
And another goal is try to involve everybody.
Yep.
A lot of times you can go the whole evening and some people never say anything. So you might want to do it, ask what does this side of the room think, or what does that side of the room think? And sometimes even then people won't say anything. So you might want to call the person by name and say, Susie, what do you think? We haven't heard from you yet tonight.
And they might get uncomfortable with that.
They might.
But
yes.
everyone else is uncomfortable when one or two people in the group never talk.
Never talk.
Because they feel like they're being judged.
Yeah.
And they're like, what does that person think of me? So you got to get everyone talking.
Right. Then sometimes you run into a situation where someone just pours their heart and soul out. And they give out information that's very personal to them. And when that happens, you need to sympathize with them. Thank them for sharing something that's so personal, and stop and pray for them if need be. It doesn't hurt to give up or get up and just put their hand on their shoulder, or maybe even give them a hug. All depends on the situation. Another thing that happens sometimes is people will monopolize, and they will be the first to answer, and they will just keep answering and monopolize the conversation. So in those situations, you can say, I'm looking forward to your response, but let's hear from somebody else first. That works quite well. Another thing is to say, let's just hear what other people have to say. And sometimes the group just totally gets off topic. And so it's your job to bring them back and say, okay, let's get back to the question and what people think.
Because you're the group leader,
right?
Not the group follower.
Exactly.
So it's your job to get back on topic. Final advice for you is start on time, end on time. Most of our groups meet for 2 hours. Start right on time, end right on time. Part of small group is connecting with other people though. So you want to make sure that there is time that they have within that 2 hours to connect. So it doesn't have to just be after the small group. And it's always better to end early and leave people wanting more than to go so long that everyone's like looking at their watch like, when is this going to get over?
That's a bad sign.
That's a bad sign. And make sure that you leave time at the end. Either you'll eat at the end or you'll eat at the beginning. Usually for us, it works best to eat at the beginning because people start talking, they get into the conversational mood. That works best for our small group. But leave time at the end to pray for each other. Again, this is not just a social club. We want God to be working in our hearts. And so we need to pray for each other, bear one another's burdens in that way. And before prayer, ask, hey, what do you got going on in the next week that we can pray for?
Yes.
Then you have something concrete, something specific. It's not just generic, I need to be a better husband. It's like, okay, what's one way this week that you can do that?
And when some people start doing that, then others feel like more like they would join in and ask also.
Yeah. So when they share, pray specifically for them right then. And as the leader, try to make sure you write down what they ask for prayer for. And throughout the week, or if you see them on Sunday, or if you see them, sometime you could even just shoot them a text and say, hey, how did it go?
Yeah.
Especially if you know the date that it happened. But that's kind of the main training that we need as we think through what does it mean to be a small group leader. And that's what you need to know as you think about being a small group leader. We really do appreciate you even considering it. Really want to encourage you to do that, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yes, it is.
It is, because it's part of growth.
Yes.
And just like a rubber band is useless unless it's stretched, many Christians don't find out what God wants to do with them because they never want to get out of their comfort zone. And so I encourage you, step out of your comfort zone, love your neighbor, love one another, bear one another's burdens, encourage one another, and be a small group leader.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks so much for joining us.